Yeah.
Some guy called over here, a doctor. He's looking for a driver. You interested?
I am not a medical doctor. I'm a musician. I'm about to embark on a concert tour in the Deep South. What other experience do you have?
Public relations.
Do you foresee any issues in working for a black man?
You in the Deep South, there's gonna be problems.
Promise me you're gonna write me a letter.
I promise. Tell me that don't smell good.
I've never had fried chicken in my life.
You people love the fried chicken.
You have a very narrow assessment of me, Tony.
Yeah, right? I'm good.
We will be interacting with some of the wealthiest people in the country. It is my feeling that your diction could use some finessing.
But why you breaking my balls?
Because you can do better, Mr. Vallelonga.
Dear Dolores.
I saw Dr. Shirley play the piano. He's like a genius, I think.
Come on, take it easy.
I prefer not to get grease on my blanket.
Ooh, I'm gonna get grease on my blanket.
This gentleman says that I'm not permitted to dine here.
I'm afraid not. How does he smile and shake their hands like that?
Because it takes courage to change people's hearts.
What are you doing?
A letter.
May I? Dear Dolores, sometimes you remind me of a house. You know this is pathetic, right? Put this down. The distance between us is breaking my spirit. Falling in love with you
Was the easiest thing I have ever done. P.S. Kiss the kids.
That's like clanging a cowbell at the end of Shostakovich's Seven.
And that's good.
It's perfect, Tony.
Come on, get out now.
You never win with violence. You only win when you maintain your dignity.
You don't know your own people. You, Mr. Big Shot, doing concerts for rich people.
So if I'm not black enough, and if I'm not white enough, then tell me, Tony, what am I?
Anyone can sound like Beethoven. But your music, what you do, only you can do that.
What do we do about the bones?
We do this.
Pick it up, Tony.
Squirrels would have ate it anyway.
Pick it up.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Whoa. You guys are excited, aren't you?
Hello, Toronto!
This is a very exciting night for us.
I'm really freaking excited to be here tonight.
What a great audience.
I'm so excited to be here. It's such a great honor.
And I'm so honored to be able to show my film to this august crowd.
What's really fun is people who love film, and you are all that, and we're very proud and happy to be here with all of you.
We should not be afraid to tell stories because we are afraid that people will judge.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity and a platform to be able to showcase our work as female filmmakers.
This is for my parents who couldn't come, so thank you. I'm going to prove it to them. I did it!
I just realized what TIFF actually stands for. Toronto is fantastic.
This is the story of our city, and we're a very proud city, and I want the world to see it.
Hello, welcome to the press conference for Green Book. I'm Alicia Malone from Turner Classic Movies and Filmstruck, and I'm excited to be joined on the stage by, starting from left to right at the back, writer Brian Curry, writer and real-life son of Tony Lip, Nick Vallelonga, Mahershala Ali, who plays Don Shirley, Linda Cardellini as Dolores, Viggo Mortensen as Tony Lip, Tony the Lip, and writer-director Peter Farrelly. So I'm going to kick off with some questions before I open it up to you guys. And Nick, I wanted to start with you. Last night, it had such a great reaction from the audience. How was that experience for you, watching your father's story on screen after so long?
Well, it was crazy and emotional and just brilliant, and seeing it
get to this point was just an amazing, amazing thing. It's very hard for me to express it. It's not like any other film, obviously, for me. It's so close to me. But for what Pete did with this movie and the story and the actors, it's just, it's a bit surreal. I'm still not over it yet.
And Brian, I want to go to you because I feel like you are the through line in this story because you have known Nick and Peter.
I have. I've known Pete for 25 years. Awesome guy. And if you want to work with someone who's just such a pleasant guy, you go to Pete first, honestly. And I was gone for a while in Boston, and I came back, if you can tell from the accent, and I said, the first person I'm calling is Pete Farrelly, because he's the man. He really is. He's just a wonder to work with and a joy. Nick and I knew each other for 30 years. I also knew his father, and what a sweet guy. And, you know, I'm just so happy for Nick and his family and his mother and father. They're looking down and with a big smile on their face, I can tell you that.
Peter, you were saying that when you heard about this story, you couldn't get it out of your head. What was it that resonated with you?
It was that it was so simple to tell that, you know, he told me this story in less than a minute, and it just hooked in because these guys were such opposites, and it was such an interesting time. And he also had jumped ahead and said they became lifelong friends for 50 years. By the way, you know, something I thought about yesterday, and we didn't talk about it all. This is a crazy thing, but 2 days ago, somebody, you know, this is the greatest thing that's happened to me. You know, this whole adventure working with these guys and this story landing in my lap and everything. And somebody pointed out 2 days ago, well, this almost didn't happen because Brian was supposed to be on Flight 11 on 9/11. And he showed up at the airport in Boston and was late, and they didn't let him on that plane. And the fact that we ended up screening this here last night on 9/11 is just one of those crazy, crazy things. But it's a blessing that I knew Brian. It's a blessing he didn't get on that plane. The whole thing's been a blessing.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. So, Peter, had you been looking for something for yourself to direct solo?
No, you know, my brother lost his son a couple years ago to a drug overdose, and he needed to step aside. So it's not that I was looking to do something solo, it's just that he needed time off. And just coincidentally at that moment, I bumped into Brian, and it all happened.
It seems like, even though this is a story that takes place many decades ago, that it's particularly timely right now. Viggo, when you read the script, could you see how it resonated with today?
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Just grab the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, first of all, obviously, it's very well written. I mean, it's as much a pleasure to read the script as it is to watch the movie. I've now seen it several times. Last night was the first time with a crowd and all finished, and you know, color and sound, everything perfect. But the script itself, I read it several times, and I loved it. I was laughing, I was moved, I was struck by how well constructed it was, and you know, and that it wasn't really predictable in terms of how the dynamic of the relationships. It was turned a lot of things on its head, but in subtle ways, and that it was basically a movie about, you know, different kinds of people getting along, that maybe didn't set out to get to know each other or understand each other, but they do by virtue of spending time together. And, you know, in any time, but I think especially in this time, that's a good story. And the fact that, you know, nobody has a monopoly or a sole right to tell stories like this, to talk about any part of society. It's like, it's open. You walk, I mean, when you finish reading the script, and especially you finish watching the movie, and I could see it on people's faces last night, you feel good. You feel good about people. You feel good about the possibility of getting along. I mean, that's wonderful. And I guess if you're a very highbrow movie enthusiast, you might go, well, you know, it's a feel-good movie, and so what? What's wrong with that? You know, but anyway, I mean, I just, I think that nobody will ever question from here on out Pete Farrelly's qualifications to direct anything he wants. I mean, it's like, to me, it's like, well, maybe he's going to be our Preston Sturges or something. I mean, it's a really good movie, and there's a lot of deep things in it. You know, and a lot of times if you're laughing, important ideas, important thought-provoking, I hate to say messages, but it's just thought-provoking concepts can come across in a much more easy, organic way when you're laughing, when you're having a good time. And I think it's really, when you see it, it looks easy. But that's really hard to write something like Green Book, and even harder to pull off directing it. You know, so yeah, I couldn't be more impressed and happier. Like Pete was last night saying, hey, it's my first film festival. He wasn't kidding. I'm here, and I can't believe I'm here. But I've been here, I don't know if it's 7 or 8 times to TIFF with really good movies. I have never seen the look on everybody's faces that I saw last night in that movie theater. And nobody moved. Nobody moved. And they would have stayed. We could have done that Q&A for like 2 hours, I think. We were having fun. It was great. So this doesn't happen. Doesn't happen.
Yeah, you're no stranger to the festival circuit or the awards circuit. And Mahershala, I know you guys met while you were both out and about and grabbed conversations whenever you could at parties. But when it came to the script, what did you like about the dynamic between your two characters?
It was just so easy. I laughed out loud reading that script. I don't really enjoy reading scripts. Scripts are difficult to read because there's so much description in there. So the rhythm, the flow was constantly being broken in some way, some regard. But the way in which I always know if I'm responding to a script, if I can hear the character. And what I mean by that is if I almost have to hold myself back from reading out loud, if he's resonating within me already, when I'm not responding to it, it's when I actually may start reading some of the dialogue and start trying to put something on it to see if I can wake it up in some way. And I could hear these characters really talking to each other. I laughed out loud at that chicken scene. I kid you not, on the page. I was like, should I be offended? I don't know. Like, this is, but I laughed hard, you know? And I don't do that in reading scripts, you know? And so just all the characters were just so alive. And at the point in which I got the script was, I don't know, at least 6 months before we started shooting, at least. And it wasn't, there were notes, like everybody has, especially working with a Viggo, like really, like everybody has notes. But that, we could have shot that thing. We could have really shot it a couple of weeks after I read it. It didn't need like work like that. It was just about us making it our own from the standpoint of another set of eyes with a more sort of intimate look at it, knowing that we were the ones who were going to have to metabolize it and take it from the page to the screen. And so I think any actor with an opinion, and I think I would love to be, you know, this type of actor, you got to have an opinion. And so in doing that, we came to it with our notes. But the dynamic was there. It jumped off the page. It was, I didn't quite know it was as funny as it was, but I absolutely enjoyed it and loved it. And, you know, the setups are there. I could go on and on about it, but yeah, the chemistry, the dynamic, it was all there. Like we kind of just had to show up and not get in the way, honestly. Like once we had talked it out, like you can hear and see who these characters are, really. And so it was about us making sure that, I think in some regard, that we weren't putting too much on it so that it was overwhelming in watching these people, you know. Yeah.
Well, the other relationship is, of course, between Dolores and Tony, and Peter has described your character as the heart of the movie. So, Linda, can you talk about how Dolores is the catalyst for what happens?
I think that, you know, by all accounts, Nick's mom was a really wonderful person. And I talked to a lot of the family, and they were gracious enough to talk to us, and nobody had a bad word to say about her. I think she was just really the heart of the family as well. And so I think that the idea that could come across in the film, I think is really an honor to her and her memory and who she was within the family. And I think that the two of them were, by all accounts, always in love, which I thought was really beautiful. And to be able to have her letters, I had all of the real letters between the two of them, well, a lot of them anyway, and to be able to read those and to sort of step back into time and into this real relationship and then step into the role and into the film was really a gift. I think that she really is a center for him, and I think she is really happy to see the turnaround that he makes by the end of the film. And she truly starts to appreciate Don as soon as he calls her. I think she knows that something is I don't know, something, there's a journey to be had, even though she doesn't want to let him go. And I think, it comes full circle for her and the family.
The letters are so sweet. I mean, I want to talk to Peter, Brian, and Nick about balancing the tone of this film because, like you were saying, there's the humour, but you don't want to minimise any of the tougher stuff that it talks about. So how did you go about approaching that?
I think Nick, kind of set the tone from the very beginning because he knew the story inside out. He knew how good this story was about 25 years ago. So why don't you take this one?
Well, as a kid, I heard the story growing up my whole life, so I always knew I wanted to make this movie at some point. So I had my father tell me all the stories. I had Dr. Shirley tell me the stories. It was just a matter of how and when could I make it. And I'll say this, Dr. Shirley said, I want you to put everything in there that's in there, exactly how as I told you and your father, but wait till I pass away. So I waited a long time. And I was going to maybe do it myself, make it with an iPhone and a couple of meatball sandwiches.
Yeah, Frank.
And yeah, so it was because I wanted to protect it. But when Brian and I were talking about doing something together, I said, I have this thing about my father. I told him, and he's like, are you nuts? We got to do this. And then I said, let me bring Brian in to write with me. But then he told Pete, and he said, Pete wants to meet you about it. And when I met Pete, it was immediately I knew. I said, I got to let this go and give it to him. And here we are.
Yeah. Brian, did you find humor in the story?
Well,
naturally?
I found humor in the story, but what's interesting is Pete has a cabin behind his house, and we would write back there till all hours of the night. And Nick would be sitting there on the computer, and Pete and I would start going like to town. We'd almost get too funny, and Nick would just sit there and go, after we'd be howling at each other. And then Nick would go, my father wouldn't say that. There goes that hour. That hour's dead, So we had a lot of fun doing it, but it was long hours, and we kept kicking the sieve to see, what's the best. How would Tony really be? Let's be honest to the character more than,
What I got to say also is that Pete really honed the script. That's where, it became what it is. Moving things, changing things, combining things, and the rhythm of where the funny should come from. And it's a different funny for Pete, but the funny is there and works to tell, because you're laughing, but all of a sudden you're getting this amazing, the deep part of it. And I think that's where Pete, from the script and then when he made the film, made it what it is. It's just an amazing movie.
I don't want to draw attention to it, but I think Nick's going to be crying the whole movie and the whole interview.
I know. Well, just one more thing for you, Nick. Your father and Don, they had this great friendship, but their road trip also continued past what we see in the film.
Oh, yes. They went on after Christmas. They went out again, and they toured for almost a year. He did the whole country. Then he did everywhere. And then
Canada, too.
They did Canada. Yes, absolutely. And then Don wanted to go to Europe, and then my mother said, enough's enough.
He's giving the sequel away.
By
North of the Mason-Dixon, 1963.
Also, by the way, during that second part, or another part of it, JFK was assassinated, and they stopped the tour for Dr. Shirley to go to the funeral. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, there could be a whole cinematic universe of Green Book coming out. So, questions from the press? Yes, down the front.
Hi, Nadia Neofita from South Africa, Eyewitness News. Mahershala and Viggo, you so completely get into these characters, the transformation that we see. How did you get in? What was your entry point for both of you? And if you want to also just tell us about your incredible piano skills, Mahershala. Thank you.
Well, and Viggo and I had to approach it different. Viggo had a different type of support, but also a different type of pressure because of the presence of the family. So he had the help and the I should let you talk about that.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
You'll say it better than I do.
So he had the support, presence, info from the Vallelonga family, which also puts more pressure on you too, because you constantly have these eyes on you going like, my dad wouldn't do that, or not quite like that. But you know, with me, I didn't have the presence of the Shirley family at that point. And so the first thing I did was they were able to get their hands on a documentary about Carnegie Hall. If you remember from the film, Don Shirley lived on the top of Carnegie Hall, and they were doing a documentary about the 60 or 70 artist lofts that were being basically closed so that they could renovate and open them up for businesses to go there. But Don Shirley lived in one of those artist lofts for like 50 years or something like that, correct? And so that was the footage that I had to go off, because it's hard to find anything on Don Shirley. There's music out there, there's some articles, periodicals, but there isn't a lot of, or really any real video or anything like that. And so that's where I saw him talking, which gave me an into sort of his sound, his demeanor, his posture, I could tell who he was from the 10 minutes of footage within tops 10 minutes, maybe 7 minutes of footage from that documentary, along with audio tapes that Nick, Pete, and Brian sent me of Tony Lip talking about their relationship. And then something I always do, I always make playlists for every character that I'm working on that are very specific to what they would listen to, what they'd be exposed to, anything of that time. That's kind of the only thing I listen to while I'm shooting. And so I had the privilege of really just going deep into his music during that time and just sort of allowing that to affect my own frequency, because I feel like music clearly does that. And so there was that. In terms of the piano playing, what I really tried to do was the specific fingering we left to the amazing Chris Bowers. But the sort of the wider shots, I had to learn. I took lessons with Chris for some time, but Chopin is, fairly difficult. So people go to Juilliard like Chris did and learn to play that, and that wasn't going to happen in 2 months. So, but what I did do was Chris and I spent, and Chris is amazing. I can't speak enough about him, and he was so helpful and helping me be in the right place on the keyboard, and sort of working with trying to come to terms with the dexterity that one has to have when playing one rhythm with one hand in these fingers and the other, and trying to be in the right place and match that up. Because the only time Pete and I got into it, and we never really got into it at all. Like this is the most generous collaborative director I've ever worked with in my life, and I've worked with some extraordinary directors, but the only time Pete and I ever had any sort of, not even tension, but the only time we got into it was when we had to do the music scenes, because this needed to be absolutely believable, and I didn't want to cheat Mr. Shirley, the audience, the music, and not that Pete did at all, but I just wanted to make sure that musicians felt like real music was being played, and I wanted to honor that and do the best that I could with that. So I really worked with Chris to make sure that was lined up properly, and just did the best I could with it.
If I can jump in, the reason is because he was working with Chris, and he was thinking of things that I'd see him do it, and I said, "It's great, let's move on." He said, No, that's not great. I said, well, why is that not great? It looked great. He goes, I wasn't sitting right. I was like, what? No one's looking at how you're sitting, but he was looking how he was sitting. Things like that. He was, he was a perfectionist, and I appreciated it. But yeah, that's exactly right. That was when you were thinking of things that I wouldn't even know to think about.
Viggo, do you want to add anything about getting into your character?
Well, it's not always, as we know, that a shoot is as enjoyable and rewarding, as fun as this, and it's not always that. Even when the shoot is fun, even rare is it that you get a movie as good as this, that you feel what we felt last night watching it, and shared with that crowd, So, but one thing I always know is that the period of what I call, I guess, gathering information, before, that's always fun. No matter what movie I've done, I've always really enjoyed going off in every direction. Until you start shooting, it's like all bets are off. You can do anything, any object, anything, and you can read something, you get ideas up from the news, somebody run into on the street. I just fill notebooks, and I have boxes and boxes of crap, and some of it's not crap, as it turns out, and it's useful, but most of it is just filed away in the back of your mind. You've got all this ammunition that you then put to one side, ideas, and in this case, I got a huge amount of help from the Vallelonga family. All these objects and ideas and notes, then you put it aside, and then you're listening to Linda or Mahershala, and certainly to Pete, and we had Brian and Nick there every day, so dialogue, things, timing, it was great having them there. And, but then that's gone, and if you get in a jam, you've got this in the back of your mind, all these things you've gathered, I always do that. But I have to be honest, when I read it, as I said, I thought it was an incredible script, but I was nervous about playing I was born in New York City, and I actually had not played someone from there before, so that was tempting, but I was worried about playing an Italian American. I'm not Italian American. And I'm aware of the fact that, there's some pretty good Italian American actors out there, and some pretty good Italian American portrayals. Iconic, really. So I was like, I don't know, man. But Pete was very encouraging about it. And as I say, when I met, and as Linda was saying, the Vallelonga was really helpful. As soon as they saw me eat, they were like sold, apparently. But I was like, there's more to it than that. No, but it was just, for all of us, I think Pete brought this up last night at the Q&A. Linda, Mahershala, and I, we were really doing characterizations. It wasn't like we were just like being ourselves and just put whatever clothes on and we'll just be yourself. It's like, yes, you're always being yourself. It's your body and your mind and your voice. It's there. Can't get away from that. But we had to create characters. It was like real character work and really fun character work. And well, not only did they help us, the Vallelongas, get ready for our roles, and they gave us objects to use, jewelry, and the necklace you see me wearing, that was Tony Lips. And you had, what would you have?
I had her bracelet, was it her wedding ring? Wedding band? Wedding band. Her wedding band, a rosary that she used to pray with, and...
You had a birthday, too.
Oh, yeah, and I share the same birthday, so...
Weirdly, and I had...
Same year.
And her picture, the little picture scene. Well, not only that, but they were in the movie. Obviously, Nick plays Augie. His brother Frank is playing Uncle Rudy, my brother. Uncle Rudy is playing my dad. Uncle Lou is playing her dad. I mean, it was just like... So what was great, Pete took a chance there. Not only is he directing his first quote-unquote drama, but he's like, yeah, I'm not going to put guys why I want you to play it. I'm not going to put guys who are who you're used to seeing in playing Italian American roles. I want you to play that, and then we're going to have a bunch of people that have never acted before. And I thought, oh wow, this sounds like could be great, or it could be a total car wreck, and we have limited time to shoot, but it was great. You see these faces, and they added stuff. They just naturally, their presence. I mean, I think it's an unforgettable family. It was beautiful, and it was really fun. One problem was it Louis that kept eating all the time? Yeah, I mean, Uncle Louis, they kept saying, continuity. I mean, he would just, they would say, cut, and he just kept eating. It was like...
Say, these are props. It's for the shot. You don't keep eating
What
the whole
props?
time.
What props? It's a good fish. Come on. Let it go to waste. But there's more out there, but it's got to look the same, like the same pieces are missing.
We'll go in the second row there.
Hello, Juan Carlos Garcia from Mexico City. This question is for the cast. Music is very important in the film. I would like to know what kind of music do you like to listen now? The most important music that feels you move. And Linda, also, do you like the meaning of the name of your character, Dolores? What it means in Spanish? Do you like it?
What does it mean? Pain. Oh yeah.
Viggo knows
yes,
it.
I didn't even think about that.
Pains.
Pains. Well, I think the thing about pain, and I think the thing that this movie does,
Suffering.
is
Only
you.
lip makes you suffer.
No, he does. But you laugh through pain. I think that's why this movie sort of resonates, because I feel like the people who've gone through the hardest things, they have great sense of humors about it. And I think that's the reason why laughter is used as therapy, because it opens you up. So I think that maybe Dolores's pain is something that actually, she had a big laugh by everybody's account. So maybe that's something that sort of opened her up and made her more loving. What kind of music do I like to listen to?
You guys, Mahershala and Viggo and Linda.
I love 70s folk music. I do.
What did you listen to, Mahershala, on your playlist for this one?
Don Shirley. It was, I mean, I listened to some classical pieces and, Rachmaninoff and Bach and whatnot, because something that we can only explore so much. There's a lot of movie there, there's a lot of story there. So, and then it has to stay relatively focused because it could go in all directions. But something that I tried to carry with me is there's this history of, and I'll speak to the Black artist journey, where there's a lot of people, and Pete and I and Viggo actually had a few in-depth talks about this, but I think something that my interpretation is something that deeply plagued Mr. Shirley was this experience of African-American artist or Black artist. Dr. Shirley was actually born in Jamaica, having to compromise in order to have a career. So if you look at Nina Simone, who wanted to be a concert pianist, she wanted to be a classical musician, a very similar story. We all hear Nina Simone and love her, and she went on and moved to Paris and had this extraordinary career. But we see these Black artists, and if you really speak to them, if you really hear their story, the version of them that we love is not who they wanted to be, though. And we can say, yeah, but Nina Simone is extraordinary, but what does that do to that person when you know you have something else to offer, something else that you wanted to choose, but the world, the circumstances chose for you what it was that you were going to be able to be? And there's no explaining to somebody that they should be happy with what they ended up having an opportunity to offer, because they within themselves feel like that they had something else, something more specific, something maybe deeper that they wanted to do. And so that's something that we try to address in one of the scenes when Lip says, but what you do is great and people love your music. Nobody can play what you play. But at the end of the day, he wanted to be a classical musician, and he wasn't able to do that because he was too Black for that. Not because he didn't have the capacity or the ability. It's just he was the wrong color. And the music and so therefore he had to do some other version of something. And so in preparing for him and listening to the music that he would have been drawn to, I tried to really go more in the classical realm, because there were the Little Richard, Chubby Checkers and Aretha Franklins of the world. He wasn't, not that he wasn't necessarily aware of them, that wasn't what he was drawn to. He was in Russia and London and these other places playing and listening to classical music and looking at that as, you could tell, this person, he had 3 doctorates. He was highly educated, spoke 7 or 8 different languages. So classical music, I would argue, was probably the most difficult form of music to play. So I think that there's this quality in him that was extraordinarily ambitious and wanted to be a master in that. And he wasn't able to necessarily do that in the public. And so that influenced what I listened to. But myself, I love hip hop and all other sorts of music.
Yes, down the front here.
Hi, Fabian Winter for Latin America. I have a question for Viggo. We all know that you've been raised, overseas, so I'm sure you wrote a lot of letters. But nowadays we don't write that many letters. So
I do.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I send postcards almost every day. I want to keep the mail system going. I've sent a bunch of postcards from here. I like to write. It's nice. It's really great to get something with someone's handwriting. If there's something, there's something personal, something. It's like that person must be alive. They were alive at that moment when they're writing, because something written. An email, who knows? Somebody else could have sent it.
Well, that's perfect for my question, because I was going to ask, when was the last time that you wrote a love letter, and how good are you at it?
I don't know how good I am at it, but I'm stubborn, so I keep writing. Unfortunately, I have someone I like to write them to, so I'm happy to do so. But I also write love letters to my son. He gets lots of postcards, and I don't know what he does with them all. It's a lot. They pile up. But anyway, sometimes they're just stupid, just a phrase. Define a love letter. A love letter is whatever you want it to be, whatever, if it's got true feeling in it,
I think I saw a question down over there. You got another one? Yes, there.
2 months to go.
Hello, all.
Different movie.
Hi, I'm from Classical 96.3 FM radio. Thank you for mentioning Chopin. And
Chopin.
Chopin, yes, sir. And Rachmaninoff. My name is Michael Kramer, also from Zoomer Radio. I would like the cast members and the director, if you would, or anyone, to possibly share something that happened to you during the course of this movie that still resonates with you. Maybe something that has changed within you that, if there is something, you still keep in your life and is going to give you power.
Sounds very profound. But there was a guy, and thanks for the question.
Thank you.
The movie is dedicated in part to Larry the Crow, which was a crow that was visiting our set for a very brief time. And he was a wonderful guy, but he didn't make it. He was hit by a car, and we were trying to get him to keep going, but he was with us for a little bit, and he passed away. So I carry Larry the Crow with me, seriously.
I remember when one day I showed up in the set, and he's got a crow, and he's trying to heal it. That's what happened. He said, "Got hit by a car."
He's like, "We got to work."
Yeah, and he was very concerned about the crow, and the crow did not make it, as he said. But afterwards, he came up. He said, "Maybe we could put him in the credits and just acknowledge him." And I, great. Can we get to work, please?
So, Peter, did you?
There's a lot of love there.
Yeah. Do you feel like this experience changed you?
Yeah, it was just, it's an unbelievable experience, the whole thing. It was, it's like magic, this movie. Yeah, it was, I feel like I'm telling all negative stories, his 9/11 story, and then my brother's son.
That's a positive story.
Yeah, well, yeah, but my brother's son, and also when we were in pre-production, my sister passed away suddenly of a heart attack. And it was not the type of thing you saw coming in a million years. She's in great shape, all of a sudden gone. And we were just about to shoot the movie. And so I, of course, went home for the funeral, but I had to keep my, I focus on this movie. You can't just go to pieces. And you have to, do what you're doing. And so I didn't really mourn her. and for a long time. And that's why last night when this movie ended, I just went to pieces. And I'm not a crier, but I started blubbering. And I realized it was just everything, you know, it's the whole experience, but it's a beautiful experience. Like it was just it's just magical. I wish everybody could feel what we felt last night. It's just, it feels like you're close to God or something.
Linda, do you have anything?
I was actually thinking about like the idea of, the thing that I took away was Nick being able to honor his parents and his family in that way, and the idea of love beyond something. Both of his parents have unfortunately passed away, but the idea of honoring his family and the love and having the family on set, and then all of us in turn having our own experiences, and then sort of loving the experience we were in, and just, I know it sounds sort of corny, but honestly, the power of love and family seemed to really come through for me. And I wasn't even there as much as these guys, but it was just one of those things where being on set with his family, and his uncle would come up to me and say, almost with tears in his eyes, "That's just like my sister." And, you know, on one hand, as an actor, you're thinking, oh, what a great compliment. And on the other hand, like, what a beautiful experience if I could put my family and all the wonderful things that I believe and I know about them on camera for the world to enjoy. Like, what an amazing gift that would be. And I think it's really, really special that I've never seen it come to life like that in a real way.
Sometimes it got out of hand, though, like, you know, because what was great is these guys were here all the time, and they checked the humor and stuff, and Pete's like, okay, and his first AD's like, we got a couple hours left, we got to keep going, and there I'm having a confab with Brian and Nick or whatever, or I do a take, and it's like, I'm eating a sandwich, I'm eating something, and I look over, and he's like, what's going on? He goes, and Pete's like, come on, guys, that's it, time out. You know, it's like, but it was like very emotional. But of course, you're seeing, like, you know, you're seeing your mom, glimpses, or we do
Linda,
something
I
we
can't
don't
even look at all. In real life, in the screen, I'm glad that she's sitting in front of me. I'm just looking at the back of her head. She just makes me lose it. So, yeah, on that level, the experience was amazing. And Pete was very generous that the idea to include my family was a risk, but it worked amazingly. There were also a lot of other actors that I put in front of Pete, and he made the choices, but we peppered it with a bunch of actors that knew my father as well. So it brought like something you can't put your finger on, a vibe to the scenes. Like, you know, when the guy's eating hot dogs with Viggo, that actor, he really ate hot dogs with my father. Some of the bouncers in the Copa and some of the other actors, they knew my father. So when they're talking to Tony Lip in the movie, they really talked to Tony Lip. So it gave it like a special, like I said, an intangible sort of vibe to it. And Pete saw that, and it makes those scenes with the guys and then with the family just more real. And they were beautiful. It was beautiful to watch and to be around.
Brian, I feel like I can see your eyes twinkling now.
You know, I knew the Vallelongas, and these two became the Vallelongas, incredibly. And then you had, Mahershala had to play a genius. I mean, there's one thing about Dr. Shirley. The world must have been in slow motion to that guy, because 3 PhDs, 8 languages, classical pianist. I mean, he's living a different life than all of us. And he probably had to slow things down by drinking and get on the same level of all of us sometimes. And Mahershala had to capture that. And he just did a beautiful job.
What I say is, I mean, I can go on and on about these two of my family, but I don't think ever been done. A genius is playing a genius.
There you go.
Yeah, I think you deserve that throne, Mahershala.
Really?
How was it playing Don Shirley? What did you take from the experience?
Oh, so much. I think I'm both an introvert and an extrovert. Like, once I'm comfortable, I'm a little more extroverted, but I think I'm relatively, like, I go home. Like, I don't go out. I don't. And perhaps I spend too much time in my head. But I think I understood something about his isolation. I think I manage or cope with my own stuff different, but I think I understood and related to and appreciated his struggle to communicate something and to feel like there was a ceiling or a cap. There was something about him not speaking the same dialect as everyone else. And I've just found that I've been so fortunate in my life to have so many extraordinary experiences, but I sort of had a life before this, and what I mean by that is I was an athlete. I wasn't acting I got into it relatively late, I was 22 really when I really started acting, and in a more committed way. And so I think when I was an athlete, that was a little bit out of body because I didn't really relate to beating somebody. And then so when I got to the arts, it was more about being your best self, I never understood so-and-so blew so-and-so away in that scene. Like I don't relate to the work that way. It actually really turns me off. So looking at Doc Shirley, I think that there was something about him always being in this process of really trying to articulate himself to the world and find where he fit in, so to speak. And not at all comparing myself to his massive talent and his mind and all that, but I have felt throughout my life a little bit sort of in my own place where I've never really fully felt like I had a community, so to speak. So that's why I really value the people that I click with, that I find that I can collaborate with first and foremost on an energetic level. Like that is the most important thing to me. It's great if you're a great actor, a great director, writer, whatever, but I like people who treat people well. That's attractive to me, and that's the kind of person I want to be. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but that's what I would say.
That was wonderful. And on that note, we need to wrap it up. So please thank the cast and crew of Green Book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.